Ready? Yay, we're ready. Let's get started. What's up, guys?
Good morning.
Hi. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, August 27th. First official day of fall, which is awesome because fall is awesome. First day of pumpkin spice latte, which is a thing that we will talk about in here because economically Starbucks has a huge impact on all of our lives.
Yes, it does.
Whether you like it or not. So before we get into content today, I want to go over a couple more things on the syllabus just because I know I've got questions and sometimes you just don't hear what I say, or sometimes I don't explain it clearly, or there's a lot of reasons maybe that you still have questions. But if you need a copy, I have them here. Who needs one? All right. Now remember, when Shanae gets here, she's running late today because someone parked behind her garage. What are you supposed to do? Yeah, ask her if you can have a new copy. Because you don't like the way it's stapled. So that'll be super fun, guys. She's got a really big desk. Not like never gets mad. So we're gonna run through just a couple more things because I want to make sure they're very, very clear from the beginning of the semester. For one thing, I did update the format on Canvas for the syllabus because I didn't like how that bus assignment was in the box with the others. So I did update that. If you want to, I don't know how you prefer to do things, if you're like a paper person or not, but the syllabus on Canvas is Google Docs format. It's pretty easy to follow, and it just really cleaned up some of those weird formatting things that I didn't like. So, how many of you do not yet have the textbook? Ooh, a lot of you. Dang, guys, get the book. Mine disappeared. I think I kind of know who took it, but mine disappeared, so I just bought the digital copy on Amazon. On Friday, I think it was like $70, which sucks, but I mean, it is what it is. You could rent it for like $30 though. So get the book today. I want to make sure you have it because you don't want to get super far behind. And the book is going to be something that you should read before you come to class and hear the lecture. That way, I don't have to just basically lecture the book to you. Y'all can read. Pretty sure they don't let you into college if you can't read. Although, maybe. But you need to read the book, and then you come to class, and we talk about things related to the book, but it's not just, I'm not just going to go outline the chapters for you. Because that's super boring, and I don't want to have fun with that. Y'all won't have fun with that. But if you've read it ahead of time, then we can have conversations about it, and then I can explain things that you don't understand and stuff like that. So please, please, please make sure you get the book. If the bookstores don't have them, save yourself a lot of money, just order it online. If you don't like digital books, order a print copy, but you need to pay for expedited shipping because you definitely want it here. Last Thursday, but since it's not, get it here by next Tuesday because that's the next day that we have class. So make sure you have the book. Broke Millennial is not as a big a rush because we're not going to read it till towards the end of the semester, but get it too just so you don't have to worry about it. That one's dirt cheap, like $4 or $5. And then as we go along, we'll talk more about these other suggested readings. So everyone's familiar with the attendance policy. We talked about that last week. Just a reminder, if you're here and I take attendance, you get the points. If you're not here, you don't get the points. Simple as that. I don't need a doctor's note. I'm not going to excuse them. That's all it is to it. Missing a couple classes is not going to kill your grade. 2.5 points. But missing more than a couple classes will. So be here. Which leads into the first attendance we're going to take is right now. So if you will get out a piece of paper, please. Or borrow a piece of paper from a friend if you didn't bring it with you. Don't. Just don't give her ideas, okay? Just don't.
I can repair.
So once you have your piece of paper out, please put your name on it. Put the date on it. And the question of the day is pumpkin spice latte. Love it, hate it. Take a stand. Love it or hate it. You can't say, no, it's all right. Like, so you either write love it or hate it and turn in your paper.
Love it or do you hate it? Pumpkin spice latte. It's just
If you
pumpkin
use a
spice or
spiral notebook, you need to tear out the little tabbies because I hate those.
pumpkin spice lattes or pumpkin spice?
Pumpkin spice lattes. Love it, hate it. Write it down, turn in your paper.
Well, Cheerios is not bad. Pumpkin spice poppers.
Bring them up. This is not supposed to take a long time.
I don't like lattes, but I've had the Cheerios. Cheerios aren't bad. And I like it. You can do pumpkin spice on like oatmeal. Just the spice. And it's good.
Jeez.
Yeah, she don't like you have to go.
Tear those tabbies off. I hate those things. If you have a spiral notebook, tear the tabbies off before you hand it in.
Tomorrow is to have this birthday.
Tear them off. They get stuck on everything.
They are.
Yeah, it's like I think I must get
Tabbies.
Trying to follow it
Tear
up.
up the tabs.
You know.
Perforated, tear them off. Can't stand those things, guys. They get everywhere. They're like glitter.
Oh, I love glitter. I love glitter.
All right. Listen up, everybody, please. Okay. So one thing that you're going to learn throughout your schooling, if you haven't already, is that it's helpful to follow instructions. So I told you, write your name, the date, and love it or hate it. A lot of you wrote like whole sentences, which is okay, but you wasted time. And time is money, guys. So just think about that. When someone gives you instructions, just follow them. I know a lot of times anxiety drives it. You think, oh, I got to put more. I got to explain my answer. Sometimes that's really great. Sometimes that's double the work. So we'll talk a lot about that too, because when you're in a profession where you are billing hourly or you are getting paid for the products you do, you got to think about how am I going to maximize profits and minimize the amount of work I put into it. That's the secret of life, right? Work smarter, not harder. So you all will get full credit today because you turned in your thing. And there are some strong opinions about it, which again, we'll talk about at some point. But in the future, just follow the directions, and that's all you have to do. I want to take that pressure off of you and let you know, like, I'm going to tell you what I need. You don't have to guess. You don't have to give me more than that. Just do what I've asked. Cool? It'll be a lot easier for you guys, I promise. So Shanae will get those entered. You've already got some attendance. And you already know you have attendance on Thursday. So this week alone, you've earned 2 attendances. Pretty cool. Good job. So that's attendance. Be here, be on time, follow the instructions. That will become important throughout your entire life, trust me. And it seems like a little thing, but someday you're going to be like, oh, man, I'm glad I didn't spend 15 minutes on this when it only took 5. So then you can write me up and tell me thank you. You're welcome. Exams and quizzes we already talked about. Test questions we already talked about. The research paper we already talked about. Any questions about any of those assignments? Awesome. Then the bus reflection we already talked about too. So the main things I think I need to really just remind you about is that if you send me a message, send it either through Canvas or through your NMSU email address. I very rarely am going to respond to you right away. That's just not good boundaries. Because if it's 10:30 at night and an email pops in and I respond, then you start to think that maybe 10:30 at night is the best time to email me. And it really isn't. Once balance starts, I'm kind of done for. So within 36 hours, if you haven't heard from me, check back and make sure I got it. Canvas can be clunky sometimes. So sometimes messages don't get sent when you think they did. But if it goes beyond that time, kind of check in and make sure I got it. Sometimes I did and just haven't gotten back to it yet. But that's generally what you're going to expect from me and from Shanae. It's about 36 hours. We'll get back to you. Unless, of course, if you send it like Friday at 5, I ain't responding until Monday. So be patient, please. I know, again, that anxiety drives a lot of things at the beginning of the semester because you don't know me, you don't know what to expect yet. So you maybe panic and freak out, and that's not going to help anybody. So reach out if you need to. You can come by my office hours. You can send me an email. If you come by my office hours, I do those as walk-ins only. Because I don't think it's fair if I say, okay, I have office hours from 8:30 to 10, and then I make appointments from 8:30 to 10. And you come in and they're like, oh, sorry, she's got appointments. I don't think that's fair. If you need to make a specific appointment with me, we can do that. But otherwise, you can just stop in anytime during those office hours. You don't have to let me know you're coming, and we can talk about whatever you need to talk about. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Maytag Repairman. Mm-hmm. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. So old TV commercials where the whole thing was that Maytags work so well you never need repairs. So the Maytag Repairman's just sitting there hoping people will come in because no one ever does. That's kind of how we feel during office hours sometimes. Like, we're there, but y'all aren't. If you don't need to be, that's totally fine. But take advantage of that. If you have questions, if you are worried, if you need advising and the advising center has kind of confused you or scared you for whatever reason, that's the time I set aside to be there and be available. You may have to wait a little bit if someone gets there ahead of you, but those are the times when you can come in and talk to me. When we're grading work, you can expect it to be graded, like everything's due on Thursday, you can expect by Monday or Tuesday of the following week it's graded. If it's not, sit tight. Shanae has a lot to do. And she does my grading for the discussions and stuff like that. So if it's been like 2 weeks and you don't have a grade, check with us and see what happened. But if it's just been a couple days, just sit tight, we'll get to it. Questions? All assignments are due on Thursdays, like I said, and they're all due by midnight. We can take them early. If you're really motivated, get a lot of stuff done now. Do your bus assignment now, even though it's not due till November. Get your research paper outline done. Do that stuff now because then in November and December, you don't have to do that much. That's the way I like to operate. So it's in your best interest. You already know what the assignments are. Get started on them. Do some work on them. And then turn them in and forget about it. You can turn them in early, but you can't turn them in late. The most I'll allow late is 1 day, and you're going to lose a whole letter grade. So working ahead is definitely to your advantage in this situation. Other than that, I just need to remind you that if you post something on Canvas and we can't open it, if it's not a doc or DOCX format and we can't open it, it's not considered submitted. So make sure when you submit stuff, it's in the right format and that we can open it. Unfortunately, that has become a problem. There's just nothing we can do about it. If we can't open your work, we can't see that it's done. So always double check. Make sure it posted. Sometimes I'll like hit send and then I'll go do something else and I'll come back and it won't have sent. Just double check, sit there and wait, make sure it sends. Then move on with your life. Questions? Okay. Those are just a couple things I wanted to remind you about as we're getting started because I know that there will be questions about them and I want to make sure that you're aware of what I expect from you.
A discussion that's coming up on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
When we submit, it doesn't have to be double spaced or anything for that one, just put the question in, put the answer.
Yep.
Question, okay.
Yes. Yeah, for discussions, I don't care that much about format. So for those, you don't have to worry about APA format or any of that kind of stuff. Just post it. It actually kind of looks weird if you double space it. I get it. I'm not like, oh, this is super long. I'm like, oh, they made the margins really big. So just post it. You can also do a video if you want to upload a video response where you just talk instead of typing it out. That's fine too. I don't care. Whichever you prefer.
Are we responding to those? To the discussions?
You can.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it required?
No.
Okay, that, I'm just making sure before I get into that,
Yes.
because it wasn't on the syllabus and I thought I'd ask.
If it's not on the syllabus,
Then,
if it's not part of the instructions,
then we're good.
then we're good. Just follow the directions and you'll be fine. So that is a good reminder though, this Thursday I will be in Austin. I will not be here. So instead of meeting in person, you guys have that online discussion due. It opened up yesterday, so if you want to do it today, do it today. Then guess what you don't have to do on Thursday? Anything related to this class, except buy your book and read it. But it will be open until Thursday at midnight. So it's simple, it's not supposed to be stressful, it's a way to start a conversation, but make sure you do it because that will count for attendance points. And then we will meet again next Tuesday in person. I guess the only other thing, I'm recording this because I do have an online section of this class too, so I'm trying out a couple things. I'm gonna record this and post it for the online kiddos to watch. So just be aware that if you walk in front of it or something, you're on camera. The chances of people watching it are very slim anyhow, but fair warning, that is what's happening up there. Any other questions? All right, so then let's do this. Let's have Shanae introduce herself.
Oh, great. All right. My name is Shanae Reynolds. I am a graduate student in the Marriage and Family Therapy program at Silver City.
She knows everyone, so like she's related to you or knows your cousin somehow. It's amazing to me. She also is doing her internship, a marriage and family therapy internship at an elementary school. So it's one in town that actually is pretty economically disadvantaged. So she'll be able to kind of bring some insight about that as well, because we forget how much family economic stuff impacts kids at school. So she'll be bringing some of that in along with her other stuff as she does some of the lectures throughout the semester. Oh, yeah. So now she gets to do some of the lectures throughout the semester. But she is here to answer any questions that you have. Like I said, she does the grading for discussions and quizzes and stuff like that. So she has my full faith and support. If she gives you a grade, I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to say, oh no, don't worry about it. I'll just change it. We'll talk about it with us and whoever has the grade question. But she does have the authority to do that. She's got plenty of experience. And this is a way for her to prepare in case she does decide to go on and get a PhD, to prepare and have some experience teaching and grading and stuff like that. So she is going to be available to you as well. Tuesdays and Wednesdays mostly are the days that you're like on campus?
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't be here on Thursdays.
And Fridays too, right? Yeah. Okay. So if you need something and I'm not here, or if you just, like you're better, that's totally fine too. I don't care. I don't have an ego about that. You can check with her and she can get back to you as well. Okay. So now let's move into today's topic specifically. You guys haven't read the chapter yet, so this is going to be a little bit complicated, but that's all right. We will do the best we can. So technically this class, it's called Family Resource Management, because what we've done is taken two classes. One was Consumer Practices and Problems and Family Finance, and we've combined them into one class, simply because that's what we needed to do to be able to offer the class. But Family Resource Management is a really broad term that encompasses all of those things I just talked about. It's really helping us to be able to think about how the decisions we make and the decisions our families make impact everything. So it's not just money, it's time, it's our assets, it's our energy. How much time do we give to people where we think, oh, there's an hour I won't get back? Or we think, oh God, I hope they don't see me, I hope they don't see me. I'm just gonna walk like this and try to act like I'm on the phone because I don't wanna give them my energy right now. So it's that kind of stuff. It's our friendships, it's our neighborhoods. I saw a meme on Pinterest the other day that said, well, my neighbor said hi to me again, guess I'm gonna have to move. Which I totally agree with. Don't talk to me if you're my neighbor. Our space, I know, right? I'm a little bit of an introvert. I'm not a jerk. I'm just an introvert. So I don't want to talk to people. And how we meet our goals. That's what we're going to talk about in here. So we're going to talk about finances because finances drive a lot of these other ones. How much time do you have if you're poor? Probably not as much, right? Because the anticipation or the expectation is you're going to have to work more hours to make ends meet. So time is a very valuable resource. And when we get better jobs and when we move up in our education, we may have a 40-hour work week. And that kind of feels like a lot too. But then some people have 60 and 80-hour work weeks. So finances impact the amount of time we have. Obviously, money impacts everything. Someone's got to pay. This is a thing I'm trying to teach my 10-year-old right now. Like, nothing is free in this world. And he comes back with, except love, because he's a therapist kid. Even then, love can be costly. So nothing is free in this world. We're going to talk about that and what are those implications. If you don't know, the Amazon rainforest is burning down right now. That affects us. That will affect us. How does that impact all of this? How do we, as a country not really near the Amazon rainforest, do we send money or do we say, no, we need that money for us? Like globally, how do we think about money and how do we think about the interconnectedness? I think I mentioned Brexit last week, where there's a whole thing going on in the UK. That's going to impact us. When Europe decided to move to the euro, that impacted American dollars. This whole thing going on with China and Hong Kong right now, that's going to impact us, right? Every time we have a trade agreement, there's a million ways that the global system we're all a part of impact our money and our time, our friendships. Probably have maybe chosen not to be friends with some people because of their political beliefs or opinions. That's part of it too. So that's why we have this whole like major thing about family resource management, because it's so much more than just how do I make more money? That's an important question. Everybody needs to and wants to make more money. But how do I manage that competing interest of needing to make more money with making sure that I also take care of my time and make sure that I don't work so much that I turn into a cats in the cradle situation where my kids are raised by nannies? How do I balance all of that? It's really hard. We're going to spend 16 weeks talking about it. We're going to have some ideas, but this can be a whole major, not just one class. So we're starting these conversations, and then you're kind of going to carry that forward and think about it for yourself. How do you balance all of this stuff? And then professionally, how do you help other people balance all this stuff too? So it's a lot. But the main thing I want you to get out of this class, the main thing I want you to be able to do is just to recognize this and be able to think about it. I want you to be able to be really stingy with your time. Don't spend time on things that don't matter. Don't spend time on things that are worthless to you. Because, well, it's a family, my cousin's brother's baby mama had a kid and they have a birthday party. I really don't want to go. I don't know anyone there. But I should go, right? I want you to be able to think about those things and say, like, should I go? How can I protect my time and my energy by taking out that obligation? There's going to be a lot of those choices that you have to make in your life. And the more you're able to do that, the better your life is. Everything in life is balance. And if you can figure out how to balance these things, life is good. It does help if you can make more money, because then you have more time, because you don't have to work as much sometimes. It does help if you have material assets. If your car's working well, that's helpful. If you're always having to repair it, that drains these other things. So we're gonna kind of talk about how all this is combined into one thing and how it's personally important for you. But again, we're also gonna talk about how do you take this knowledge and this way of thinking and share it with the people that you work with professionally. How do you help other people to get to the same place? Because it is not something we talk about. It is just, a lot of people think it's kind of fluff, or like it's just like, oh, well, it must be nice to be able to say no to things. Like, hell yeah, it is. You should all do that. So that's how this class kind of separates from a finance class. That's how this class separates from like economics, but finance and economics are a part of this conversation. So that's what we're doing in here. That's what we're gonna spend the whole time talking about. And you're gonna start thinking about. And by the end, hopefully, in some of these areas, you're gonna have made some personal growth. The activity on Thursday is kind of starting to think about budgets. How many of you already have a budget? Not that many of you, like maybe 30% or so. Good for you, awesome. Always be better. Everyone could have a budget. So things like that, figuring out how am I gonna save money, how am I gonna spend money, how am I gonna invest money. That's personal growth that you can make this semester. Time, friendship, all that kind of stuff also. Sometimes you lose friendships along the way, and sometimes that's sad, and sometimes that's a tremendous gift that you give yourself. So that's part of the conversation too. Are the people you're surrounding yourself with bringing something to the table, or are they just taking? That makes a big difference in everything, right? So we will spend a lot of time talking about these things. And what I hope is that as we do, you start to make some changes personally. You don't have to. I'm not going to grade you on whether or not you do. But, you know, give it a try because it will make your life better. And how many classes can guarantee that? All right, so then speaking more specifically about family, we're systems people. None of us exist and survive on our own, right? Can everyone agree with that? We all need something. We all need people. It doesn't have to be blood, but we cannot get through life on our own. I've tried, guys. As much as I would love to, it's just not possible. So then we need to kind of conceptualize what we're gonna talk about when we talk about family. Broad definition, families are unions where members strive to meet the needs of all members while maintaining that family unit over a period of time. We want to keep the family going, right? That's why people want sons, so that their name can go on, because names are important. We strive to meet the needs of all members. Is that a necessary component of family? Some people shaking their heads no. Should it be?
Yes.
Absolutely. Like, what's the point if you're not? But we know the dark side of that. We know that families aren't always looking out for the needs of the entire group. If they do, the entire family rises together, right? But sometimes that doesn't happen. But ideally, what we're thinking of is families where everyone kind of has a shared goal and shared values. They can provide stability. I think it should say families can provide stability, because sometimes our families are our rocks, right? They're the ones who help us. They're the ones we cry to. They're the ones who make us laugh. But families are also always changing. Developmentally, we're all changing. Our economic situations change. Our house burns down. Someone goes to the hospital. So they're this stable, flexible force in our lives. They used to be private institutions, but now they're political. Families are very political. And politics definitely have to attend to family matters. So The structures vary. This is what I want to talk about for a few minutes, traditional and non-traditional. Thinking about, I like to watch a lot of TV. Even though I'm going to cut my cable because it's really expensive, I still like to watch a lot of TV. And so what I want you to do, think about your notion of traditional and non-traditional families. When I say that, traditional family, non-traditional family, what comes to your mind? And then I want you to get with a partner, and I want you guys to identify a TV show or a movie that kind of has an example of both a traditional and a non-traditional family. So take a couple minutes and do that just in groups, 2 people, and then we're going to talk about that a little more.
It was all. My favorite part. It was my dad, kids. But
So, thinking about traditional families, what are some of the examples y'all came up with? Just tell me the name of the show.
Modern Family.
Modern Family, traditional?
No, that was non-traditional.
Oh,
Leave It to Beaver, okay.
non-traditional and the.
We're not there yet. Traditional, what other ones? Lizzie McGuire? Okay. Good Luck Charlie, Cosby. What else? Traditional.
Mary
Traditional.
Good, that's so right.
That's So Raven. My God, y'all are so young.
Marry My Children.
Watch these shows. Marry Good Children. The Waltons. Oh my God, my mom loves the Waltons. She watches it every day. What else?
Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie, sure. Not traditional by today's standards, but okay. So all of those traditional, what does that mean? Like mom, dad, kids, basically, right? All living together, okay? I'm not so familiar with the Nickelodeon ones that y'all mentioned because they're on, but I don't watch them. Moms work in those? Yeah, some of them, not most of them. Okay, so traditional kind of historically has also meant one breadwinner, one person staying home. Not so much now, but okay. Non-traditional, we heard Modern Family. Jane and the Virgin. Didn't that get canceled?
I
No.
have no control.
It's the last season, it was just confirmed. It's done. It's done, we don't even need to talk about it anymore. What else?
Full House.
Full House, okay. What'd you say?
Said all American.
All American?
Yeah, all American.
Brady Bunch. Brady Bunch, super, that was like the original non-traditional, right?
Supernatural.
Which it doesn't make sense. It's like,
Hey, Dad raised two
how does
boys.
the Brady Bunch make sense? But yeah, that was one of the originals. Would you say Supernatural?
Single dad raising two boys.
Okay. So more and more these days, we're seeing a lot more non-traditional shows, right? Okay. The reason I talk about TV so much, besides the fact that I do just really enjoy it, is because the media reflects real life, right? When the Brady Bunch came out, it was kind of a thing. Like, ooh, this is risky. When Leave It to Beaver came out, it was Leave It to Beaver, it might have been Brady Bunch. They weren't allowed to, they'd have separate beds, the parents, right? And there were rules about how they had to have one foot on the floor because they couldn't both be laying in bed together because that was dirty, guys. Now we've moved past that a little bit. But like the media culture reflects what's happening in society. So it's helpful for us to know. When Modern Family came out, I want to say, I think it's on its 10th season now, it was a huge deal at first. Now, who cares? I don't know if you guys remember when Ellen had a show, like a sitcom, not her talk show. That was it. She lost her job when she came out on that show because we weren't yet ready to accept lesbians on TV. That had never happened before, guys. Everyone else who'd been on TV up until that point was straight. We have to be aware of this because the way the media goes helps us to understand where people are at. It's interesting, and again, we'll talk about that more, but there's a lot of examples to work from here. The non-traditional families, we're talking about families that don't meet that picket fence type mentality. Maybe two moms, maybe two dads, maybe a single parent, maybe grandparents. That show that lasted like a minute, Breaking Up Together, where, you know, the family's divorced, but one parent lives in the garage. That's a modern thing that happens now. So thinking about traditional and non-traditional families, we've all been able to accept them as families, right? When we're working with families, we want to be able to understand what they consider a family to be. There is a very strong thought that family is family, blood is thicker than water, so you must be loyal to your family. That drives decision-making. If I feel that obligation, if I'm like, oh man, it's my family, maybe I don't take the job in New York because my family will be really sad. So we really want to understand when we work with people, what does it mean to you to be in a family? Is a family a source of strength for you and stability? Is a family the major source of your stress? How does your family structure operate? And what could be done better? We're moving into a place now where divorce still holding steady. 50% of first marriages end in divorce. Second marriages is more like 70%. So divorce is now a thing. It's been a thing for a while and it's not going anywhere. But now we're to a place where we're seeing divorce as maybe a good idea sometimes. It's not always harmful. It could be a positive. We're seeing people get married later. The millennial generation is getting married in their 30s and above. My parents got married in their 20s. My grandparents got married in their teens. So we're seeing the concept of families changing as time changes, and frankly, as economics change. Questions, comments? All right, let's keep going. How do we use resources now? So, you all saw the title. The study of family resource management is looking at how we consume resources and how we kind of allocate them in a family. So it's not just how much money is coming in, but how do we decide where that money goes? The key concepts that we need to be aware of is that the interdependency that we talked about, no one exists in a vacuum. No one has pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and become the American dream without help. You can do a lot on your own, and you can take a lot of pride in your accomplishments, but you cannot say that you did it all on your own, because at some point someone helped you. And sometimes we don't want to believe that. Sometimes the person that helped us was a total asshole, and we wish they wouldn't have, but they did. So we have to own that. All individuals within a family system, and I use that term just to indicate some sort of configuration, are independent on each other in some ways. I can only work so much as someone can be available to watch my kids. I have to rely on that, whether that's a school, whether that's a daycare, whether that's family, whatever it is. We're all interdependent. Dynamic environment, meaning it changes. Things change, circumstances change constantly. There ought to be conscious effort to meet the needs of everybody. Doesn't mean it always happens, but there should be. That's what we're striving for. We're trying to cooperate so that eventually everyone gets what they need. Not always what they want, but we're trying to make sure everyone gets what they need. So, okay, it's time to buy shoes. Who needs shoes versus who wants shoes? How much shoes can we afford? Let me tell you, kids' feet grow really fast. So my son, he's a cool kid. He wanted Jordans last year. I ain't buying Jordans. You know how long he had those shoes that he paid for himself before his feet grew out of them?
Less than 6 months.
2 months. Are you kidding me? You know how much that was? He lost $150 on that. He was super proud of them, and they were pretty cool. But when we're thinking about how do we meet the needs of everyone, shoes are a need. Jordans are a want. So how do we teach children those things? Like I told him, when you're older and your feet have stopped growing, that's a different story. But at this point, does it make a lot of sense to pour, he gets $9 a week allowance. So does it make sense to pour like 16 to 17 weeks of your life into these shoes? Maybe, but that's a choice you're gonna have to make. So meeting needs, not meeting wants, is a very important concept we're gonna talk about a lot, because I want a lot of stuff. I don't need much of anything. And then finally, we want to recognize that family resource management is a process. It's not like you get your budget set and you're golden. It's continually needing to be updated. It's continually needing to be reassessed. Okay, so you need new shoes because yours don't fit you anymore. Cool, you're getting new shoes. I can't just say, come back next year and we'll try again. Because if your feet outgrow those shoes, you need more. But if they don't, guess what? You're wearing them even when they're scuffed up. So it's a dynamic process. It's continually something that you have to revisit and look at. You can't take for granted, you know, my birthday was yesterday. And when I was little, presents, my grandma sent me $200. That was pretty cool, right? Like you kind of get to this place in your life where you're like, oh yeah, I'll use my birthday money for whatever. And then you turn 39, not so much birthday money anymore. They're like, you are grown up, you have a job, I'm not sending you a check anymore. So everything changes. You can't be a grown up and count on birthday money. You have to figure out how to change as your situations and circumstance changes. So that's what this whole thing is talking about. Like you have to continually think about it. It's not something, very few things in life are like, okay, I made that decision and never have to think about it again. I can't really think of anything that is that. But with this specifically, because of the impact it has on everybody, it's a continual process. That's why we tell families, you need to have family meetings. You need to have budget meetings. You need to sit down once a month and review your budget and be like, hey, how much are we spending on iTunes? That becomes contentious in divorce, just by the way. There are lawyers getting paid $300 an hour to decide how you're going to split up your iTunes library. Like, I'm not kidding, y'all. So if that's that important, maybe we should talk about it. Because when you do that stuff, you have your little credit card on file, right? And you're like, oh yeah, no, I'll just rent this movie. I'll just buy this movie. I'll just go ahead and pre-order this, whatever. Then you look at your statement and you're like, holy cow, I spent how much last month on that? So you constantly have to reassess and look at it. And I think I would add to this, it's all about prioritizing. We kind of talked about that a little bit already, but really family resource management is practicing priorities, figuring out what's most important. If we think about hierarchy of need, food, shelter, clothing, those are like basics, right? We need those. But once you get beyond that level, how much do we need? How much of a house do we need? How much of a car do we need? Do we need the really expensive sunglasses or maybe the Target ones? And there's justification for both. I don't buy Target sunglasses. But I have chosen my priorities and I'm going to live under that. That's me. That's what we're trying to get families to do too, is talk about priorities. What's most important? Because when we attach meaning to things and we say like, oh, I have to have this, that's a value statement. That says something about us. So part of the process too is that. And again, all of this is like introduction stuff. All of this is going to be talked about in more detail throughout the rest of the semester. So this is very basic introduction. Who's my business major here? Someone on this side of the room. No, we have a business major in here. Who is it? Don't make me look it up. All right, I'll look it up for next time and we'll talk more about it. But here's a statement I want you to think about. The family is not a business. Is it? How is it not? What's different?
Feelings are involved.
Emotions, absolutely. People are not businesses either. People can have brands. People can be involved in businesses, but they're not businesses because businesses that are run on emotions fail. Because I guarantee you, I would love to see some of my clients for free. They can't really afford therapy. They really need the help. That's all well and good. But if I work for free, do my kids eat? I mean, they're not getting Jordans already. They've already got a tough life. But when I also don't feed them, you think that's gonna be a problem? Absolutely. Businesses are not families. Families are not businesses because of emotion. You can't pick it out, and people try. I set up a trust, it's very business, there's no wiggle room. Bullshit. It just doesn't happen. So it parallels business, but it is not the same thing. And that's something that we really need to keep in mind for whoever my business major who won't identify themselves is, or for any of the people who are in finance or who are in accounting. My accountant is a great accountant. He saves me lots of money every year, but he is not a fun guy to hang out with. And that's okay. He knows his strengths, he does a really good job. I know mine, that's why I pay him to do it for me. But we really need to remember that, and we need to remind everyone about that. If we're trying to operate family as a business, it's not gonna go well. We can take business concepts, we can take things like a budget, we can take things like meetings and incorporate them into the family. But if we try that, what happens is we end up with some sort of on paper thing, and maybe everyone's getting financially compensated, maybe everyone feels good about that, but emotionally, there's a lot of cutoff. So really just keep that in mind when we talk about this, because we tend to talk about business and finances together, and that makes a lot of sense. But we also need to remember that when you have people involved, people are messy, and people have emotions. And that really can make you make really stupid financial decisions. That's the difference. So when we talk about all this kind of stuff, keep that distinction in mind. And when you're in your own families thinking about stuff like that, think about wait a minute. Am I taking the emotional stuff into consideration? Because if I'm not, someone's gonna get their feelings hurt. Someone's not gonna talk to me for 4 years, whatever it's gonna be, because I'm discounting that part of the human experience. It's whatever business you go into. I don't care if it's drug dealing, I don't care if it's corporate 500, I don't care if it's YouTuber, which is the thing now. Business is business and people are people. And if we can remember that, families are gonna be a lot more successful. That's really what we want. We get to contribute. I can give you financial advice, I can talk about investments and stuff like that, cool. But I'm also gonna include that conversation about how anxious are you gonna feel when you watch your Bitcoin rise and fall 300 times a day? Is that something you can tolerate? So it's a lot more than just, here's where you put your money, and this is what happens with it. It's, how do you tolerate that stress that comes along with it? Because the stock market is nothing but gambling. So we're gonna talk more about that too, but always, always, always remember these are separate things. Questions, comments? All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up for today. Read the book, read this chapter, and read the next chapter before Tuesday. That's when we'll meet back in class. Thursday, you have your assignment due online. Make sure you just get it done, and I'll see you guys then. Have a good